Hello again. Been a couple of weeks since I did the last session on this, where we coloured the minute marks. So as I said last time, today I'm going to show you just some basic stitching. Remember the holes we have around the edges. I'm going to show you, we've got standard needle, yeah, and get some thread. It's got some thread. I thought this sort of natural colour would go well with this, so as I said, I'm going to show you 3 different ways. One is just the basic single needle method, and then there's a thing called a saddle stitch. Just take a bit of thread off there, where you use 2 needles, and then I also have a stitching awl, which does, as I said, both sides of a stitch in one stroke. So we'll be doing that too. So I'll probably start off here. Just need to thread my needle. This is wax thread. I like using wax thread because it's quite thick, and so just normally threading a needle. A lot of people push their needle through the thread as well, but I just find it easiest to pull it through and give it a bit of a twist. The main reason, my needles are fairly thick, and a little bit thicker than the thing. If I was using finer needles, fair enough. So remember the holes we had there. So to start sewing, I just pick a hole, pick that one there. I don't always start from the back. Well, that one actually start from the back there, and just basic pull it through, leave a bit of a tail at the end. And just as if you were sewing normally, so in one hole, out the other. And in this way, you obviously get a stitch every second hole. Oops. Just give it a tug each now and again. Stitching both sides, as you can see. A bit closer in the hole. Oops. It's pretty basic stuff. You go pretty fast. I normally do this single needle because it is quick. If you've got a lot of stitching to do, it does take a bit of time, because obviously some big pieces you're going to stitch quite a bit. I do most of my stitching by hand, mainly for the therapeutic. The fact that you're not thinking about all the worries of the world, you're just concentrating on your stitching, and it's quite soothing sometimes. Be it monotonous, but it is soothing. Alright, so get to the end. Now that's only halfway. So once we come up through this hole at the end, I'm going to go back down the opposite direction. So every hole you came out of, you go back in. And it fills in the gap in between. This thread's probably a bit fine for doing this. The holes, I got a bit overzealous with the holes. I was thinking of using thicker thread, but this is the only thread I've really got at the moment. And obviously if you're sewing, normally you'd have 2 or 3 multiple pieces of leather that you're stitching together. For this, we're just doing it as a bit of decoration. again another colour to contrast with a chocolate brown. Couple more to go. Alright, so when I get to the end here, I'm going to turn over. The tail I left before is there. So I'm just going to tie a knot. The back side of the pieces are not going to be seen, so the old right over left, left over right, bit of a reef knot there, and Bob's your uncle. Snip it off, and there's the first side of stitching done. Normally when I've done some stitching, I normally get my mallet, and because it's wax thread, let's give it a bit of a bash. Squeezes it out and mushes the wax together, so it just sort of stays there. So as I said, there's the first line of stitching. What I'll do is I'll grab another needle and I'll show you how to do the saddle stitch with two needles. So give me a few seconds. Okay, we're back. As you can see, this time I've got a needle on both ends of my thread, and I've just pulled it through the first hole there, and I pulled it through so the piece is, you know, about halfway. And then very similar to last time, front to back with this needle, and then with the opposite needle through the same hole in the opposite direction. Turn it over, pulling through, and there's one complete stitch on both sides done. Same thing again through this side, needle through the other side, pull hard, same again through the first side, through the same hole, back the other direction, pull it hard, and as you can see, it's almost identical to the first side we did. It's just we're doing them at the same time. I'll just continue on there. I find this way a little bit fiddly myself. Because it's left over right, right over left, whereas as I said before, it was just easy to go all the way along, turn around and go back the other way. The other thing I probably need here is what's called a stitching pony. I'm in the midst of either purchasing one, but they tend to be a little bit expensive. I'll put a picture up of a stitching pony in a minute. Or try and make myself one. So that might be actually a project I have soon, to actually make myself a stitching pony, which basically is a piece of wood or a contraption that holds the piece up in front like that, and so you've got two hands to actually just go backwards and forwards, instead of having to hold a bit of leather as well as doing all the stitching. I'll probably make this method a bit quicker. Maybe that's why I find it so fiddly myself. Another needle through. Oops. It's almost pulled the needle out then. Give it a tug. So this is where it's good to poke the needle through the bit of cotton too, so it doesn't actually come off. So through the first hole, second needle through the same hole, give it a tug. First hole, second needle through the same hole, opposite direction. Got to be careful there that you don't actually pick up the thread and push the needle through the thread, so just make sure when you're pushing it through that you're actually missing the thread. Through the first way. Back through, same hole, opposite direction, second needle, and so on. 2 more stitches and we're done this side. I take it this type of sewing came from saddlery because it's called saddle stitch, so don't know, I'll have to do some research. Anyone out there tell me, put in the comments maybe where saddle stitching got its name. I mean, it is fairly obvious, but if any of these history buffs or wordologists, if that's a word, can give me an answer, give us a shout. And with this one, because we end up on opposite sides, I could continue around, but I might just back stitch through this one here, bring them back both over to the same side, and again I'm going to tie them off. Right over left, left over right. It's amazing what you learn in primary school, you never forget. Alright, there's our second side done. Snip it off. And give it a bash. Two down, 2 to go. Alright, okay, back at it. So the third method of stitching was using what was known as a stitching awl or a sewing awl. These are all 3 of these are awls. Basically the idea of an awl is just pointy thing with a handle. A lot of times when you're actually sewing and the holes aren't quite pushed through, you can actually use the awl to push through. If you've got very tiny holes and thick thread, it just helps with the sewing. Not all the time you have to put such large holes in for sewing. Sometimes you just use the awl and make a small hole and then try and push the needle through, and it just sometimes helps. This one's a bit more aggressive looking for bigger holes or even for lacing. So it's lacing, as you will see in the next lot, is flat, and that's sort of like a diamond shape. This awl is the one designed perfectly for stitching awl. As you can see at the moment I've got a white thread in there, which is not quite the right colour, same colour as this one, so probably the first thing I'm going to do is change it up. But this is a good little unit in the fact that the end screws off, and in the end you've got your tools for adjusting and different size needles and what have you all live in the end there. So while the tool's out, basically just undo the screw on the side there, or loosen it off with the tool. And you can pull that bobbin out, pull the thread through. And we need to put the other bobbin on. There should be enough on that one, I think. We've only got a little bit of sewing to do, so I'll pop that in there. Put my screw back. Then we get a little tricky bit of actually threading the needle. So the easiest way to do that, I find, is to take the needle out. This thing goes over the top there. It's like a little spanner and undoes the lock nut. Pull the handle out, so you've got a hole there where the thread comes through. And just basically it's manipulating and getting it up through the hole there. Sometimes I do find it easier to take the bobbin out again and get the thread up through that hole before you put the bobbin in. Okay, so let's see if I can line it up there. Get it started. Because you use wax thread, sometimes this little shaft gets bunged up with wax. The easiest way to fix that is I just get the needle and whack it down and push out some wax. Not much in there, it's pretty clean because I cleaned it out quite recently. Just enough so you can tip out the end and pull a bit through. Alright, so now we can put the bobbin back in. Oop. Might help if I put it in the right hole. Oh, come on, in you go. Put some hair around it, I think. Alright, so then on the needle itself, it's got a shaft where the thread actually runs up, so it pops in through the bottom there, goes up through the shaft, and then through the eye of the needle. So I normally just get that, pull a fair bit through, line up the slot with the thread, pull a bit through, and then thread the needle. Just make it a bit flat. I find if I run my fingernail over it, flattens it out and it goes through the hole a little bit easier. Pull it through. So then we can actually put the locking cap back on, the locking nut. Locking nut that just holds the needle in place. I mean, sometimes you put a fair bit of pressure pushing this through the leather, it gets tough, and just tighten it up with a wee spanner again, just so it doesn't move. Just making sure that channel there stays in line where it's supposed to be. And just get a little finger tight so it doesn't come off. So we're almost ready to go. Always put my tool back so I know where it is and won't lose it. I do have a habit of putting things down and then not knowing where I put them. You can see my desk's a bit of a mess, but you know, we'll work on that. Okay. So the way this works, what you want to do, normally again if you have multiple pieces of leather you're sewing together, you want to again start them from the back, just find a hole. Actually I'm going to start right on the end, push it all the way through, and then we want to pull that thread through onto this side. It can be tough because this is quite a large needle. And so you want to pull out a fair bit from this side, and depending on how long your stitching is, you know, I normally take it maybe twice as long, maybe 3 times as long, because that's going to make up all the stitches on this side of the leather, and the stuff in the roll here is going to fill in the leather on the back. You'll see what I mean in a minute. A little bit through, so it's, you know, a fair bit, probably a bit too much there, but I don't want to run out at the end. And then it's a simple fact of, you pull the needle back out, put it into the next hole, bring it all the way through, and you see as you push it through it comes off the roll. Draw it back slightly to create a loop, and then get that bit of thread, push it through the loop, and then pull the needle back through and pull it snug. There's your first stitch. Just do that again, you might have missed that one. So into the next hole, push it all the way through. I'm trying to get into the camera. All the way through. Pull it back just a little bit so you get a loop. Get the thread through the loop. Keep it on this side. And pull it back through. Again, 2 stitches. We'll go in the next hole. And like with this one, I keep keeping the tension on, keep rolling that back. Through the next hole. So through the next hole. All the way through. Pull it back to make a loop. Through the loop. Pull it back. I think this is the way I sew most of the time when I've got big jobs, because it does both sides of the stitch at the same time. So pulling back the tension through the hole, through the next hole, pull back, make a loop, and so on. Okay, next. Through the next hole. Just bring back some tension. All the way through. Pull it back just a little bit. Through the loop. Leathercraft isn't hard. It can be time consuming, but learning all these little tricks and things and finding these gadgets, I find I'm enjoying. You know, learning things and learning how things are done and learning different ways of doing things. So, I mean, hopefully you guys who are watching this are getting something out of this. I mean, you got to think yourself, you know, why am I watching this? You know, if you're interested in maybe starting up some leathercraft yourself, and you just want to see, you know, how it is fairly simple. Hit subscribe, because I'm going to do a few other things later on, a little bit more elaborate than this. This is quite a basic project, but I thought it was a good one to start with. I've got some people at work who've asked for some wallets and some dog collars and those sort of things, so they might be the next lot of projects we do after this. A lot of these things I like to don't have patterns. And so I like to nut things out, how to do things. I had a friend who asked me to make him a ukulele case. I think he made it as a joke, but I accepted the challenge, and it took me a while to work out how to do it. I bought myself a ukulele for making up the patterns and things, and nutted it out, and thoroughly enjoyed just working it out. And so rather therapeutic. The worries of the world go away, because, as I said, you're concentrating on something you're enjoying doing. So yeah, there'll be a few things, projects, so it's going to challenge me, and hopefully, if you're interested, yeah, hit subscribe, and the like button, and the bell, and all the bells and whistles, and come along for the ride, and you know, see how I work out how to do things. Hey, if you ever see me doing something and you think there might be a better way of doing it, or an easier way of doing it, leave a comment, and that way I learn as well, so we can learn together. So there's my side done almost. As you can see, as I've been talking, I'm just plodding along through the loop, pull it tight, and last one for this side, through the loop. There is probably a better way, a better direction, left or right through the loop, but as you can see when I was going along there, I didn't really matter which one I went through. It does a fairly neat sew. So it is single needle, double needle, fairly much the same technique, and now with the sewing awl. I'm probably going to continue that last one on using the awl. This is only going to be a very short video, I think, today. I'll go back and fix some of those up because some of those knots aren't as nice as they could be. And then probably in the next video we'll get the lacing out and we'll lace the edges. And again, I think I'm going to show you two different ways. I've noticed that this is not square, it's actually got longer sides and shorter sides. So I'm actually thinking what I might do is like a single lace on the bottom and top, and then do what's called a double lacing or double on the sides, just to bring out the sides and make it back to square. But that'll be the next video. As I said though, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, if you're interested in finding out a bit more about what I'm doing and some ideas in leathercraft, or even the things that Doug's doing with his he's back now from his trip, and so he'll probably have another video or so over the trip and then back into the shed and see what he's doing. So yeah, hit like, subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll see you next time. Hooroo.